Hi everyone, it's Kim. Thanks for joining me. Today I want to jump ahead a little bit and look at some new dyes for the winter holidays and Christmas. Companies are starting to send their products out right now, and I know some people are anxious to get started on their holiday cards. I can think of a few people who are probably finished with their holiday cards. And then there's a third group that we don't get started until after Thanksgiving is over. But even if we're in that latter group, we're able to take in some ideas. So when it's time to start, we know the direction we want to head in. So let's just take a look at a couple things today. We're not going to go overboard, just take a look at a couple of new dyes and maybe some possibilities with them. And I want to start with Spellbinders. They have a couple of new dancing dyes out. I've got two to share with you today. I know there's others out there, but we're going to start with the Dancing Nutcracker Fritz. And like many of Spellbinders dyes, there's some options that are available in just one die set. So here's what he looks like. Our basic guy, and he does dance, and you can make him dance or you don't have to make him dance. Lots of details. So there's a lot of pieces that are available in this die. A couple of the variations. The first one is on his face, and we'll take a look at this a little closer in another card. But just to start with, you can have him just with a mustache, or he can come with a mustache and beard and teeth. And there's this little guy down here that shows the teeth. And then he has a drum. He also has his candy cane stick, and he also has his third little stick or staff here. I'm not sure exactly what you would call that. So a few variations, and of course you can change his hair color and his uniform color, whatever else you want to do. Now, on all of the Spellbinders dyes, I swear there's always a few dyes I cannot figure out what in the world they are for. And the ones that I'm going to just point those out and explain them real quick. The first thing that I noticed that there were two different lengths of arms, a long arm and a short arm, and I'm like, well, why is that? So at least if I can go back on the package and look, here's the long arm, here's the short arm is used as if he has his elbow bent and then he's holding on to something. So for the drummer, he uses both the short arms, and you could use both the long arms if you want. You don't have to use a short and a long, just depending on how you've got your guy positioned. A couple other pieces. This piece right here, I had no idea what this was for. And my first idea, which I will show you here in just a minute, is not how I used it on this card. And this is actually how it's supposed to be used for this staff. To instead of the candy cane or the peppermint, just put it on the top of his little staff there. The other piece that I never did figure out till I looked it up is this little piece down here. I could not figure that out, and I didn't see anything on here where there's like this kind of an R-shaped die. What this is for his curls, for his hair. So you could cut this out, and then this would be kind of a support for his curls. Now, I didn't know that. So his hair is attached without that piece. You can do it with or without, but that is what it's for. And I finally went to the Spellbinders website and pulled this die up. And when it talks about the description, there is a PDF you can print off. And I printed this off because, again, sometimes I'm clueless as to what a few of these dyes are for. So here's that R, kind of backward R for his curls. And here's that other little piece here for his staff. And then they do show this little piece here. You can probably figure this out, but this one is for his teeth that go between his mustache and his beard. But when you see the die, it looks a little odd. So this just makes it a little easier to see what the pieces are for if you're like, I have no idea what that is. That I'll hang on to that. So down the road, if I forget, I can go back and refer to that. The other thing I want to talk about is the height of this guy. So it says on the packaging, I'm almost 6.5 inches tall. Great if you want to make a slimline card, but what if you want to make an A2 size card? You don't want to make this guy so big. So I want to show you a couple things we can do. So I made this guy, first off, if he's not standing on his drum, I think I measured the drum to be about 3/4 of an inch. So let's measure this guy without a drum. And we'll go from the bottom of his toes to the top of his little hat. And I'm going to say that's about 5 3/4 inches. So still larger than an A2 size card. So what can we do to kind of like shrink this guy down? So here's my second Nutcracker. And it's very easy just to move his boots up, his long legs. And this still looks normal because when we see these boots, generally they go up to like the kneecap anyway. So his legs are really extended. If you want to make an A2 size guy, here, just you can put those boots up wherever you want them. And this guy, if I measure him, and again, you have some flexibility, he's about 5 1/8 inches tall from the bottom to the top. So you can make some adjustments. He does have a lot of details on him. So he did take a little time to put together, just depending on how much work you want to do. Here's his mustache versus the mustache and the beard and the teeth. I'm not sure if I really like his teeth. I get why they're there, but I almost like just the mustache, or maybe the mustache and the beard on his own. This time I'm using the peppermint stick, or the peppermint on his staff, so you can change up however you want him. This guy dances too, but he's kind of running into the sentiment there, so beware of that. If you're going to have him dance, that was probably not the best place to put the sentiment. And the sentiment is from the Better Press plate, and I'll put that on the product list. So there is our Nutcracker. You can make him taller if you want to have him on that drum, or you can just make him fit an A2 size card, and then some variations in his hair and his face. You can just play around and have a lot of fun with this guy. There is a second dancing die out as well, and he is a cutie. This is the Moose. And this guy is called Dancin' Moose Klondike. Again, on this one, we can easily see how we can change the height of him. He can go up to almost 6 inches tall, which again, if you're doing a slimline card, is great, but maybe you don't want a slimline card. This one I think is a 5x7 card, but I wanted to put both of the moose on here just so you can see how you can change him up a little bit. So his antlers, they can go up or pull them down. That will shorten him. And if you want him not to be so leggy, just pull his body down. You don't have to have it clear up, covering this opening here where you would put a pop dot so he could dance. You can just pull his body down to wherever you want it. And if you need to trim this down, that's not a big deal. These guys do not dance because I thought, I definitely have their legs entwined with each other. So if you don't want to make a dancing one, you don't have to. They can just have their legs attached to your card base. So this gives you an idea how you can change up the height to make it fit an A2 size card. You also have some options with his outfit. So he's got a cool looking sweater and then just a scarf. And one thing I had fun with was with the arms. Now the scarf is pretty much set unless you want to maybe trim out the shoulders and move his arms. You could certainly do that. But for his legs, or his arms in this case, there are 3 pieces. So you can have like 2 straight arms and then a bent one. And you could use those on either side. Definitely easy to position those. I'm going to show you another moose here in a minute where his whole body is positioned differently. And then you can just dress these guys up any way you want. The candy cane is from an old Tim die, and the stocking is also from an old Tim die. So I will put those on the product list because I know those have been discontinued, but anything that you have would work for that. The embossing folder, this is from Spellbinders. I believe this was last year, called Ski Lodge. And I kind of had some fun with this just kind of by accident. I took the embossing folder and I wanted to get a little bit of color in the background. So I opened it up and I inked up the side where the image part, like the snowflake, is raised up. So that gives me a debossed section on my card base. So if the image was raised up versus like if you feel mainly smooth here, that's not the side I inked up. And on this one, it's like the back side of the embossing folder. So the side without Spellbinders printed on it. I just took my ink pad, rubbed it over. I always spritz my paper on these 3D embossing folders, ran it through, or I guess this one's just a regular embossing folder. It's not 3D. Ran it through my die cut machine and pulled it out. And I liked it, but I had a couple spots where the paper was kind of damp, and so the ink kind of spread because I was using distress ink. So what I did was like, okay, well, let me just make the whole thing kind of move. I spritzed the whole piece of paper and let it air dry. It was too hot to use the heat gun. I just let it air dry. Well, then when it was done, wow, that ink had spread a little more than I probably would have preferred it to. And it was kind of bland. So I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to repeat what I just did, except this time I'm going to use more of a teal green. So I opened up my embossing folder, used teal green, just like I did with the blue earlier. I made sure I lined up my piece of paper. I could feel where it fit in and had that lined up perfectly, ran it through again. So now if you look, I have not only blue, but you can see kind of where I have some teal green in there. I didn't spritz it again. I wanted that green to stay in place. But I really like how that colored the background of that embossed piece of paper. And it also, when I ran out through the second time, it kind of reinforced that debossed image. It's a little crisper than it was after it dried from being originally spritzed. So a couple ideas on the background and how you can use this guy in a different height. And I want to show you another moose. This guy, he's got a totally different pose. Loved his legs. This one was actually fun. He just kind of came around because I was like, I don't want him always standing up. What else can I do? And when I had this elbow and I thought, he could be leaning down on his side, and it was so easy to reposition his legs. This one leg I literally cut off. I just cut it right here, bent his knee, and then I could glue that leg back up into his body after I laid him down and positioned him. And then I just had fun with him. The background is another embossing folder from Spellbinders in the Pines. Again, I think this is from last year. I did the same thing as I did with the blue Ski Lodge one. I like how this one turned out a little better than this, but once I got all the pieces on here, it didn't really matter. Holiday Cheer and Clothes. That is from a Better Press Plate. And then this little bell and the greenery is from a new Tim Holtz vault die, which we'll take a look at here down the road. But if you have a bell or whatever little embellishment, I just needed something to add to this little sentiment. And then my glass. I know I had made one prior because I didn't have a die for it. And I was looking for another die. I thought, I could make a glass using this other die. I never did find that other die, but while I was searching, I came across this ancient die that I got on clearance. Bingo, there was that glass. So I'm going to have to keep this die handy because there's a glass, and how many times have I been looking for a glass? So that worked out perfect for him. This one might be one where you have a gift card on the inside to get a bottle of wine, some type of alcoholic beverage for a friend, or something else, But in this case, just because of his pose, I thought he needs to be holding on to a wine glass. So you can have fun with him. Again, change his body around, change his arms around, dress him however you want. Antlers up or down. That will help also with the size. And I have one last thing I want to show you, more of a very simple card. Sometimes when I make cards, I think about who I'm sending this to. Is it someone who is going to appreciate all the work that goes into some of these more detailed cards? Will they hang on to it, or are they just going to toss it after the holidays? And if they're going to toss it, I probably maybe on some people still want to send them a hand-crafted card, but I don't want to think about them tossing all that work away. So this is an embossing folder from Sizzix. And this one does have several pieces. So this is called Winter Wishes. We're just going to look at the embossing folder today. So this is a 3D embossing folder, but it does have a coordinating stencil and die set. So if you want to up it a little bit, you can certainly and easily do that. But this is just totally with the embossing folder. I took a Posca pen and just went over the winter wishes. That was really easy because it's so well embossed. It was easy to stay on top of the letters. And then I just took a white ink pad and just went around kind of on the top here. It's really hard to see that just because the paper is so light to begin with. And then I did go back and just add a little glitter. I'm not even sure if that, you can see that barely on the berries. And then this flower, oh, I cannot remember whose flower this is, but I just put this here where there is a poinsettia. You could use any poinsettia, anybody's poinsettia, if it was just kind of that size. So that's what I did, just to add a little bit of interest to this card. But this is pretty simple. Again, I don't want to think about someone tossing my holiday cards. I send them, but if they toss this one, it would be a lot less devastating than, let's say, if they toss something like this, because there's a lot more work into this one than this one. And if you want to take this a step up with another die cut, I decided to add the Nutcracker to him. I just added the top part of his body. I didn't need the legs. This time he's got his drum, so I don't have to use the drum for him to stand on. I can just use it for him to play. So we've got our embossing folder. Here's our guy again. And notice the sleeves are a little different. So let me pull this one out. Actually, let's pull this guy out. So this piece that I didn't know what to do with originally, I thought, I wonder if that is for the sleeves on for his arms. So because this guy's playing the drum, I thought I need 2 short arms for him. So I used this little piece kind of as if his sleeves are gathered here at the top and the bottom. So another way to use our little guy, and another way to use that little piece. And again, this just ups this embossing folder a little bit more than just having a flower. Again, depending on how much you want to do with it. This time I just inked up the raised portion on both the words and the flowers. And then I did put a little red Posca pen on the berries and then topped it off with a little liquid glitter. So you can decide when you go through your card list of recipients, how much work do I want to put in some of these cards, and go accordingly. So there's some ideas, just a few dies if you're starting to think about what you want to do for the holidays, or if you're like, okay, well, I'm not ready to get started, but I'll tuck some ideas away, and then after Thanksgiving, I'll be able to get started on my holiday cards. So thanks for joining me, and I'll see you again in a future video.